Come, all you moonshiners, if you want to hear.
Welcome back, viewers, distillers, beer makers, wine makers, hobbyists. You know, we like to cover all of our bases. And you don't know how happy it makes us that you have chose us to provide you with the information that you search for. So please comment below. Yeah, you know, I always say that, and I really, really appreciate that. Also, now you can contact me through email below. You'll see that. Or you can even call me. And there's hundreds of people out there that'll tell you, I'll answer the phone, and we can talk. I usually have enough time, but if I don't get to you, please give me an opportunity. I can call you back. Okay. Hey, oh, by the way, for all those, I'm going to do it. For all of those haters out there, and I do get comments about a lot of stuff, I won't delete a comment. Everybody's opinion is valuable. So for all of those of you who think that I just talk too much or I'm way off track, well, we've got probably 30,000 or more in this community who would take issue with that. So, having said that, please, at least you're watching, keep them coming. Okay, today we're going to talk about moon. You know it. Shine. And this is going to be another episode of our beginners type of information, because we've got this information all over the place, and we want to try to shortcut it and get it down so someone can, if you're interested in getting into this hobby, this is a great place to get that information. So we're just going to cover some real basics. So please be cautious and be careful when you start throwing those comments out about I didn't cover this and I didn't cover that. I'm going straight back to the basics so that we all can get the information that we need, especially those who are interested and just are curious. All right. You know, moonshine. Moonshine is a real good name, and it's a name that just sticks with everybody, and there's no difference between moonshine and what is made in a commercial distillery. Didn't know if you knew that. All spirits, every spirit, name it, describe it, starts off as moonshine. And it's a base product, but we gave the base product the name moonshine because it was made under the cover of darkness under the moon, so on and so forth. So, this is our goal. Of course, you always want to make something that looks like this. And everything that comes out of a still is going to be crystal clear. So, be forewarned. If you're trying to make something that looks like a bourbon, bourbon doesn't come out of a still. Everything that a spirit has as far as flavor and aroma and mouthfeel is done after the distillation process. So, George, why are there so many different recipes? Well, remember, every different recipe will give your base spirit a character. And that character can be enhanced after the distillation process. Let me give you a quick example. If you distill a whole bunch of apples, are you going to get apple moonshine? Yeah, you sure are. But are you going to taste it and go, wow, that's apple? More than likely not. You'll have a hint there of apple, but what you will have, same thing with blueberry, strawberry, all those, you'll have the character of the mash, which was apples, the fruit, in your spirit. Now, whatever you do to that afterwards in adding apple flavoring, whether that be cider, juice, or a combination, and hey, a quick apple pie moonshine would be a quart of apple juice, a quart of apple cider, and 3 sticks of cinnamon, 2 star anise, and put that in a pot, bring it up to a simmer, let it simmer for a couple of minutes, turn it off, put about 3 tablespoons of brown sugar, stir that all up. That's your mixture. Allow that to cool and use that as a cutting agent for your apple moonshine. Now you have apple pie. Imagine that. Now that's not the only recipe. There are hundreds of them out there, so don't say George has the only one and he's got it wrong. Or that's one. There are many, many, many others. Okay. Again, we use it. Commercial distillers do the same thing. We'll use an essence at the end of this one in particular is a cocoa mint rum. So it goes, I tell you, I've got a couple of these laying around. I'm going to be using them, so I'm going to be making a rum. And I'll make that out of a molasses. That's a base product for making rum. So we use these. The key is to make sure that you're successful at the very end. So what's important? I've talked about it before. It's that three-legged stool. Remember, you've got ingredients, you've got process, and you've got equipment. Now, if you've got those three things, your process is solid, your ingredients are good, and your equipment is good, you will be successful. There'll be no rocking over. If you lose one of those and you shortchange the ingredients, it'll fall over. And you'll wind up junk in, junk out, just like a computer. Come on. Oh, all right. Moonshine. Let's get rid of that. What you're going to really need in the very beginning is don't forget. Don't forget you're going to need, if you're making moonshine, make a beer, wine, or a mash for whiskeys or moonshine, you're going to need a hydrometer for fermentation. The only time the proof and trail hydrometer or an alcoholometer comes in handy is after distillation. So you don't need this for beer or wine. You only need it for a distilled product. And that's because the scales go like this. You know, this one stops here for the data point for water. This one starts here for the data point of water and goes that way. Okay? So don't get them confused. This one's normally color-coded. Now, it's important to have a hydrometer for a couple of reasons. One is to make sure that your yeast is healthy, viable, and doing its thing. The second reason is that, and you'll hear me, they'll say, George, you keep preaching. What's your original gravity? Trust me, the only surefire method that you and I are on the same sheet of music is if we have an original gravity. That's the data point that tells us everything else we're going to need to know if we follow some simple basic rules. Okay? We're going to teach you how to get there. All right. Let's just do something real simple here. Let's take a 5-gallon bucket because it's really easy to work with 5 gallons. 5 gallons is sort of like a universal. You can have a 6.5 gallon, but you can have a 30-liter or 30-gallon fermenter. It doesn't matter. The math works the same way. So if you've got 5 gallons in here, and you introduce a certain amount of fermentable sugars, okay? Remember, the sugars go in, and then you get it at the right temperature, somewhere around 72 to 74 to 78. It all depends. The yeast will eat the sugar. The byproduct is going to be CO2 and ethyl alcohol. There are a few other things, but you're going to separate all of that. Now, that's just a surefire. That's biologically, that's what happens. You're going to change the contents from, they call it an aqueous solution. You're going to change the contents from sugar and water to water and alcohol. And then we're going to separate that later. But it's important to understand that how much sugar you have will have a direct reflection on how much alcohol you have in here. 5% is normally around a beer level. You know, you can get 5.5 beer. I think Budweiser came out with a 6% beer. Most of them are 3.2 to 4 to 4.5. Your wines usually run anywhere between 8 and 14%. You can get a really good 14% wine. That's going to cost you an arm and a leg, but and some of your champagnes that are really high in alcohol content. And then a standard mash for even on the commercial level is usually hovers around 12 to 13%. Now that's alcohol by volume. So how do we get to alcohol by volume? Well, it's a direct result of how much fermentable sugars we have. I hope I haven't lost anybody yet. So for those of you who are starting off, understand that you can't make alcohol, you have to create alcohol. Okay? So if you put, let me say, I get calls and they'll say, Jordan, I put 3 pounds of sugar in a 5-gallon batch with 5 pounds of corn, and I put this in, I put that in. Well, first, I mean, I know they've already got 3 pounds of sugar. Those are fermentable. Everything else is not. Unless they, well, for sake of argument, everything else is not. And they say, oh, I fermented and doggone it, one day it was done. And what am I going to get? I said, well, what was your original gravity? That's the first question. But usually they don't have any idea. That's okay. But we figure, 3 pounds of sugar and 5 gallons of water is 2-3%. How long does it take yeast to eat that? To eat this amount of fermentable sugar? Not long at all. So yeah, your fermentation will stop early. Okay, well, let's say for instance, you've done everything right and you've got 10 to 12 pounds of sugar in a 5-gallon batch. And now we're working our way up to about, let's call this 14%. Well, 14% of sugars that are in your water that your yeast are going to eat are going to take a little bit longer. That's where the 7 to 10 day average comes in. So normally we'll tell people, it'll take an average of 7 to 10 days. Now, yours could ferment in 1 day, 3 days, 7 to 10 days. Whoops. Let's say, for instance, you get it to 20% alcohol by volume. Well, that's 20%. That means that 1 gallon of that 5 gallons is ethyl alcohol. That's what that means, 20% ABV. And a lot of people try to shoot for that. I'd advise not to until you become more familiar with the process. There are ways to get there, but in general, that's a bit high. It makes the environment inhospitable for yeast. But if you did that in a 5-gallon batch, it may take 14 days. It may take 20 days. It's going to take a while for that yeast to eat all of that. So that's where the time factor comes in with fermentation. And maintain the temperature. Okay, what happens when fermentation stops? Well, the first thing you check is temperature. If it cools off, your yeast will go dormant. And they just sit back and they're kind of waiting for, waiting for the sun to come back out and waiting for someone to bring them that mojito. And once you reheat that and you warm it back up slowly, they will come to life and they will go nuts. We very seldom have a problem with it getting too hot. If it gets too hot, like 120 degrees, 110 degrees or more, you're going to kill that yeast off. And there's no way of bringing those back. They don't just go dormant, they just die. So, yeah, if you get too cool, if it gets down like 65, 60, it'll really, really slow down. They may remain active, but they're going to slow down. Or they'll just give up and stop and wait. And then you just warm it back up. The next step is to stir it to get them resurfaced, and then they start moving around, and then they'll start eating again. Okay, that's how you can rescue a stuck fermentation or one that just kind of holds up for a while. Look, let's do this, and I'm going to keep this 5-gallon up here because I really want people to understand that you have 100% control over the alcohol by volume in your mash. Now, what will that tell you? Why is that so important? It's so important because when you do go to distill and you want to separate that, you don't want to sit there wondering, well, when's it going to be done? I mean, how much am I going to get? And if you have an idea, it's just a data point. But it's so important to have that data point. If you have a 10% ABV, well, we already know that 20% is a gallon. 10% is a half a gallon of pure ethyl alcohol. Okay? So you've got this gallon jug sitting here, and you'll be able to fill that up halfway. You know that half of that is going to be ethyl alcohol. That's what's in here. Now, the challenge is we have to be realistic. We're not going to draw it out at 100%. You know, we'll probably draw. It all depends. And again, you're still, and everybody else is still. Your process makes a difference. For sake of argument, let's say that we're running an average of 140 proof. Okay. Now, 140 proof is equal to 70% alcohol. So that means 70% of the alcohol is ethyl, 30% is water. There are other things, for sake of argument, it's water, okay? That's where you get the 100% from. So you're not going to draw 100% ethyl alcohol. But what you are drawing is you're going to draw an additional 30% is going to be water. So what would you anticipate, and I'll tell you what I would anticipate, if a 10% mash goes into a 5-gallon still at 5, or 8-gallon still at 5 gallons, what do you think I should expect to receive on the opposite end when I'm all finished? Well, in my estimation, since I know that I'm only going to collect this at about 70%, give or take, and I mean that's a final alcohol proof once everything's mixed together. But so an average, it's 140 proof. That 140 proof out of all of that is going to be somewhere down in here with, I'll have probably 3/4 of a gallon. I'll have my ethyl alcohol, and I'll have the water that also carried over with that. So I'll have 3/4 of a gallon of 140 proof. Okay, now what do you do with that? Because of course that's not drinking style. There are those who like it that hot. That's really hot. You're going to cut it to 80%, which is a commercial standard. You can make it 85, you can make it 90 if you like it real hot, whatever the case may be. But you're going to cut that, and you can use spring water, distilled water, that recipe I gave you for Applejack, or apple pie. And when you cut that, you're going to wind up with probably 5 quarts. So you're going to wind up with 1.25 gallons. So you'll fill this, and you'll have another one over here. So you wind up with about 1.25 gallons of some pretty good stuff. Make sense? See, that's where that whole process goes through. So if you're following this, you can see where, from the other videos, when we did, what do you need for fermenting? What do you need to distill? What equipment do you need to get started? This is where it really makes a difference. And you just need to understand this. This is all basic, but it's not intuitive. It doesn't come to you right away. You just have to play with it for a while, or have someone explain it to you. All right. You know, how much sugar do I need? Oh, well, you need fermentable sugars. Fermentable sugar, table sugar is good. It works. Just like Fleischmann's yeast will work. It's not the best thing to get, but it'll work. Table sugar is not the best, but it'll work. Okay, about 15% of table sugar is non-fermentable. Okay, so your final gravity will always be off a little bit because you've got some non-fermentable sugars in there. But hell, 85% of it is fermentable, and your yeast are gonna be happy, happy, happy. Now, corn sugar is 100% fermentable. They'll eat all of that. That's the difference. Okay, we just know that 1 pound of sugar in 1 gallon of water will raise the gravity points by 39 points. Let's describe that a little bit closer so you really, really understand. You know, your hydrometer starts off at 1.000, then it goes to 0.010, 0.020, 0.030, 0.040, all the way up, and then it'll finally wind up going to 1.100. All right, so if you put 1 pound of sugar in 1 gallon of water and you dropped your hydrometer in there, it would read 39 right here. That's where it would float. 39 gravity points. So what does that tell us? Well, that tells us that, 1 pound and 1 gallon is 39. 5 pounds and 5 gallons would be 39. So if you put 5 gallons in there, or 5 pounds in 5 gallons of water, that's what it would read. What if we doubled that? If we doubled that, 39 and 39 is what? 70, 99 is 80, 78. So let's go 0.050, 0.060, 0.070. Get this out of the way. 0.080. So this is where your hydrometer would read. Now that's double the amount of fermentable sugars available. So of course it increases the potential alcohol by volume. It's the potential alcohol that's in there, should the yeast eat everything, starts right here. George's goal, whenever I make a mash, is I shoot for 0.090. That gives me around a 12%, 12.5% or so that I can work with, and it's really, really easy to work with that. You can do so much with it because it's just so pleasant. You can shoot for 14, 15, 16, and like I said, there are ways, and we'll get to it later on. How do you get to 20? Above 20 is really, really like shooting for the stars. Okay, so that's how we know we get to there. But if we're doing just a regular sugar wash. So what you do is you drop your hydrometer in and you measure it and you go, whoa, depending on how much sugar you put in, you read your scale, you go, all right, I dropped my hydrometer in and it reads 1.039 or 1.040. Damn, I'm trying to get to 90. Well, what's the difference between 40 and 90? 5? Yeah. So you go, okay, I know that 5 more pounds will raise it 39. I got to go 5. I'll put 6 more pounds in. I might want to put 6.5 pounds in. So you put 6.5 additional pounds and you test it. And you go, oh, okay, I'm right here about 0.885 or I'm at 0.95. That's how you get to where you're going. So in the future, you'll be able to determine how much fermentable sugars do you need to achieve the alcohol by volume that you are looking for. And remember, in that 5-gallon bucket, let's say for instance, we hit it good, we got 14%. Now it's easier if I do 15%. 15%. If 15% of 5 gallons is alcohol, that means that in a gallon jug, 3/4 of that is ethyl alcohol. Huh. Of course, we don't collect it at 100%. You know, we start using our averages again. Now, see, because we're looking for a guide something that we can follow. So I'm like, man, when I get to about a half a gallon, I'm going to stop. That's when I'm going to sales. Okay, so when I get to about a half a gallon, I'll start collecting in pints. Just a little at a time, and then I'll be testing that, smelling it, and tasting it, and just, you'll get the feel for it. It really, really is a wonderful thing. That, for everybody, is the way you determine what you need for sugars, how you ferment, and what you could potentially get on the other end. We've got a lot more information coming, and we'll be back with you, so please bear with us. And until next time, happy distilling.